The cafe had gone completely silent before anyone even realized why. Every pair of eyes turned toward the front door as a young father stepped inside, holding the tiny hand of a little girl with soft curls and a faded yellow backpack. He wasn't late. He wasn't dressed poorly. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He simply carried the quiet exhaustion of someone who had survived more storms than anyone should face before turning 35. The hostess glanced from the reservation list to the little girl, uncertain for a moment. Across the room, the woman waiting for her blind date slowly stood from her chair, expecting the father to apologize and leave. Instead, the little girl looked up at him with complete trust, smiled, and squeezed his hand tighter. What happened over the next few hours would change not only their lives, but also every stranger who happened to witness that unforgettable afternoon. Sometimes love doesn't arrive the way people expect. Sometimes it walks in holding the smallest hand in the room. If you believe kindness deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone you love, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Your support helps these heartfelt stories reach people who may need hope today. Rowan Mercer had never imagined his life would become so quiet. Years earlier, he had been a cheerful architect with endless dreams, spending weekends restoring old houses with his wife, Miriam. They imagined a future filled with children, family vacations, and Sunday mornings that smelled of pancakes and coffee. Life seemed perfectly ordinary until illness stole everything from them far too quickly. Within 11 heartbreaking months, Miriam was gone, leaving behind a husband who barely remembered how to breathe and a 4-year-old daughter named Nessa, whose innocent eyes searched every room, hoping her mother might suddenly return. Grief changed Rowan in invisible ways. He continued working because bills never paused for broken hearts. He learned to braid tiny ponytails by watching online tutorials before sunrise. He packed school lunches, forgot his own breakfast, attended every parent meeting, and stayed awake through endless nights whenever Nessa cried herself to sleep. He became both parents without ever believing he was enough. Every evening after work, he would race through traffic just to arrive at daycare before closing time. The teachers admired his determination, but they also noticed the permanent fatigue resting behind his eyes. Years passed, and life settled into a rhythm built entirely around sacrifice. Rowan stopped accepting invitations from friends because finding a babysitter was expensive. Birthdays became quiet celebrations with homemade cakes. Holidays felt smaller without the woman who had once filled every corner of their home with laughter. Yet Nessa grew into a bright, compassionate little girl who somehow understood that her father carried invisible pain. She often left tiny handwritten notes inside his lunchbox, reminding him that he was the best dad in the whole world. Those little notes became the reason he smiled during difficult afternoons. One afternoon, Rowan's elderly neighbor gently suggested something he had avoided for years. She encouraged him to open his heart again, explaining that loving someone new would never erase the love he still carried for his late wife. Rowan smiled politely but dismissed the idea. Dating felt impossible. Who would willingly choose a man whose entire world revolved around a child? Who would understand canceled plans because of fevers, bedtime routines, school plays, and unexpected tears? Months later, after constant encouragement from coworkers, Rowan reluctantly created a profile on a local matchmaking service that specialized in meaningful relationships rather than casual encounters. He answered every question honestly. Widower. Father. Daughter comes first. Looking for friendship before romance. He expected silence. Instead, someone accepted the invitation for a blind date. The woman waiting at the cafe that Saturday afternoon was named Celine Ashcroft, a pediatric physical therapist whose gentle smile often comforted frightened children learning to walk again after serious injuries. She had never married and had quietly cared for her aging grandmother for nearly a decade before recently losing her. Friends described Celine as patient beyond measure, but loneliness had begun settling into her own heart. The morning of the date began beautifully. Warm sunlight poured across the city streets. Families walked through nearby parks, children laughed around fountains, and colorful flowers lined every sidewalk cafe. Rowan carefully ironed his shirt while Nessa happily colored pictures at the kitchen table. Everything seemed perfectly planned until the babysitter called only 30 minutes before the meeting. Her son had developed a high fever, making it impossible for her to come. Rowan stared at the phone in complete defeat. Canceling would make him appear unreliable. Leaving Nessa alone was unthinkable. Rescheduling felt embarrassing after weeks of planning. Finally, he made a difficult decision. He called the restaurant, explained the unexpected situation, and apologized sincerely. Surprisingly, the hostess simply told him to come anyway. Walking toward the cafe, Rowan rehearsed countless apologies inside his mind. He expected disappointment, frustration, perhaps even anger. Instead, he focused entirely on making sure Nessa felt comfortable. She wore her favorite sunflower dress and carried a tiny stuffed rabbit tucked safely beneath one arm. When they entered together, whispers quietly floated through the dining room. Some assumed he had misunderstood the meaning of a blind date. Others smiled sympathetically. Celine herself looked surprised, though not offended. She simply watched Rowan kneel beside his daughter, straighten her backpack, and gently wipe a tiny smudge of chocolate from her cheek before approaching the table. During those first awkward moments, Rowan explained everything honestly without trying to earn sympathy. He admitted he had almost stayed home because disappointing strangers seemed easier than risking an uncomfortable meeting. But Nessa had insisted he should still go because, in her words, everyone deserved at least one happy afternoon. Those simple words softened something inside Celine almost immediately. Rather than viewing Nessa as an interruption, Celine asked about the drawings peeking from the little girl's backpack. Nessa eagerly showed colorful pictures of birds, flowers, and castles, proudly explaining that every castle needed huge windows because sunlight made sad people happier. The innocent observation lingered quietly around the table. Lunch unfolded differently than anyone expected. Instead of forced conversation filled with rehearsed questions, three strangers slowly grew comfortable together. Rowan spoke honestly about parenting after loss, admitting there were mornings when simply getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. Celine shared stories about helping injured children regain confidence after devastating accidents. Both understood pain without needing dramatic explanations. Nearby diners gradually stopped pretending not to listen. There was something deeply moving about watching two adults treat one another with genuine respect, while a cheerful little girl unknowingly became the center of unexpected healing. Halfway through lunch, Nessa quietly excused herself to use the restroom with the hostess. Left alone for the first time, Rowan apologized again for bringing his daughter. He admitted he fully understood if Celine wanted to leave after lunch and never speak again. Celine looked toward the sunny window where children chased pigeons across the square. She confessed that she had spent years believing perfect relationships required perfect timing. Yet sitting across from Rowan had reminded her that real life rarely followed perfect plans. Love wasn't found in flawless circumstances. It appeared inside honest moments shared between imperfect people willing to carry each other's burdens. When Nessa returned, she shyly handed Celine a folded piece of paper. It contained a crayon drawing showing three people standing beneath an enormous tree. Above them, a bright sun smiled across the page. Underneath, in uneven handwriting, were the words, "Everyone looks happier together." Celine struggled to hide tears. The waitress quietly walked away to give them privacy, wiping her own eyes. At another table, an elderly couple reached for each other's hands after watching the touching scene. Even the busy manager paused for a moment, sensing something extraordinary was unfolding without anyone planning it. The afternoon stretched far beyond the original reservation. They wandered through the nearby botanical garden, where butterflies danced between blooming roses beneath clear blue skies. Rowan noticed something unfamiliar happening inside himself. For the first time since losing Mireille, he laughed without guilt. He wasn't replacing old memories. He was finally allowing new ones to exist beside them. Over the following months, their friendship deepened slowly and naturally. Celine never tried to replace Nessa's mother. Instead, she respected the precious memories already living inside their home. Together, they created new traditions while honoring old ones. Every birthday included lighting a candle beside Myria's photograph. Every holiday included sharing stories that kept her memory alive. Nessa flourished beneath the gentle encouragement surrounding her. School became easier. Her confidence grew. Rowan no longer carried every burden alone. Difficult days still arrived, but they no longer felt impossible. One spring afternoon, Almost exactly a year after the unforgettable blind date, Rowan invited Celine and Nessa back to the same cafe. The same hostess recognized them immediately and smiled before leading them to the familiar table by the window. This time, Rowan reached into his jacket pocket. Instead of delivering a grand speech, he simply thanked Celine for seeing his daughter before seeing his circumstances. He thanked her for proving that compassion was stronger than convenience, and that family could begin in the most unexpected moments. With tears shining in every eye nearby, Celine accepted his proposal. The entire cafe erupted into applause. The elderly couple from the previous year happened to be dining there once again. The waitress cried openly. Even strangers celebrated, because they remembered the father who had once walked through those same doors carrying nothing but uncertainty and hope. Years later, people still spoke about that ordinary Saturday afternoon. Not because of an expensive engagement ring or dramatic declarations of love, but because one little girl with a yellow backpack reminded everyone that hearts should never be judged by the situations they carry. Sometimes the bravest people are not those who appear fearless. Sometimes they are simply parents who wake up every morning choosing love over exhaustion. Sometimes the greatest first impression isn't perfection, wealth, or confidence. Sometimes it's the courage to arrive exactly as you are, trusting that the right people will understand. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Tales so more people can discover stories that remind us kindness still exists. Special request before this story ends. Please comment with one word that describes what true family means to you. Your words may become the encouragement someone else desperately needs today. As the golden afternoon sun filled the cafe windows once again, Rowan watched Nessa laugh beside Celine, realizing that life had not erased his pain. Instead, it had quietly transformed it into compassion, gratitude, and hope. The blind date that everyone expected to fail became the beginning of a family built not on perfect timing, but on patience, courage, forgiveness, and unconditional love. And every person who witnessed that remarkable day carried home the same unforgettable lesson. The most beautiful chapters of life often begin when we stop hiding our scars and allow kindness to find us exactly where we are.